For many years, many black peoples, many of us who have been into our Hebrew Israelite and our Ethiopian Hebrew culture and history, have often heard the identification of Asiatic black man, Asiatic black man. Now, the whole idea of Asiatic black man became, you could say, popularized, especially in the black community, with the Nation of Islam and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and later on it began to be disseminated through Clarence 13X, you understand, who founded the Nation of Gods and Earths, otherwise known as the 5% Nation. Yet it still persists this very day that many black folks would identify themselves as Asiatic black man, you understand, or Asiatic black peoples. In other words, the connection between Asia and Africa is very clear, but yet many of us don't know how deep it is, how historic it is, and the wealth of information. You understand, as we begin to learn this information, we begin to have a new appreciation, you understand, of ourselves as a people, you understand, of our anciency as a people, as well as of other peoples. You understand, connecting our ancient history with their ancient history. So there's much that we can learn. You understand, what was done right as well as what was done wrong, by learning who we are. You understand, our identity as Ethiopian Hebrews, or as Beta Israel, or Hebrew Israelites. Now, when we say Ethiopian Hebrews, that's the general prophetic name. When we speak of being Hebrews, specifically, covenantally, we're speaking of ourselves as Beta Israel, or we're speaking of ourselves as the once lost but now found sheep of the house of Israel. Yet the question that now is before us is, who are the Japanese, and are the ancient Japanese Israelites? Are they lost tribes of Israel? Where are the lost tribes? Where are these 10 lost tribes? You understand? And concerning the prophecy of the end times. Now, there's some very important research that I want to put out there, and I want you to get a note of it. There's this one particular Japanese researcher, Arimasa Kubo, who wrote Israelites Came to Ancient Japan. You probably can find this article. Is a 4-part article. It's very much in depth and has a lot of interesting facts and evidence that has been associated with that, which we also include in our overall lecture, as well as some additional information that Arimasa Kubo either did not have, or other information he didn't have. We really can't figure out why he didn't use further information. But one of the reasons is perhaps because at this time the article seems to be trying to link Jewish, you understand, the European Jews and Japan, but the half of the story needs to be told about who are the real Beta Israel, who are the real lost sheep of the house of Israel. And this is where we triangulated the information and triangulate the knowledge with the connection between Japan and Ethiopia. The connection between Japan and Ethiopia prior to World War II is very crucial. It's almost never even reported, even though it's known information, and it had a lot of effect on the invasion of Italy, Italy's fascist invasion of Ethiopia. It helped them for pretext because of the closeness of the two imperiums, Imperial Japan and Imperial Ethiopia, just prior to the outbreak of World War II, and just prior to the fascist invasion, Italy and Mussolini's invasion of Ethiopia. That there was a marriage. In other words, Ethiopia was left at the altar by Japan. You understand? But what's the details of this marriage and cultural and business link and arrangement that was just beginning again in modern times? You understand? And the pretext that Italy, from the rumors, how this whole story was spun out of course, so that the Europeans began to think the Asiatic black people are linking up. The Asiatic black people, remember, this is around the same time as the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is also preaching and teaching on the Asiatic black man. And then there is this ties and relations and close links between Ethiopia and Japan just prior to World War II. That information is out there on the internet, and we're going to provide some of the links for this, because this is all a old study that we have done before, very cursory and very general, but because of some of the recent interests by many of our Japanese Rastafari brothers and sisters, you understand, in the truth of the King of Kings and his Christ, you understand, as well as a renewed interest in the Bible, you understand, by the Japanese Rastafari and certain Asian Rastafari, it becomes even more important for us to really make this historical connection, because it's important for people to know who they are. You understand, just as we know it's important for us to know who we are, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. We have to now take on the question of the Israelites going to ancient Japan. Are they lost tribes of Israel? What is the relation of the Japanese to the Hebrews? And are the Japanese Israelites? That's our question. We're going to open up with this particular question. It's a very important question. We did a little bit of commentary earlier in the earlier portion of this lecture, but we want to focus on this because there's so much information. It's a wealth of information that's connected with this. So we wanted to take this in a sort of a chronological, you understand, sense, as well as break it down into sections and portions, because one area of the study, as we've already noted, is the Hebrew and Israelite connections with ancient Japan. That's one area. Secondly is ancient Ethiopia and ancient Japan. There's a close connection from ancient times right up to the 20th century, to the time of Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia and the Japanese emperor. There was a very close relationship. This basically sent shock waves around Europe. You understand? And it actually helped, because of the spinning of the propaganda, it actually helped with the fascist invading of Ethiopia and the whole world being mute to that. You understand? So Ethiopia was betrayed on many different sides of it, but also that is prophetic. You see, what happened to Ethiopia during World War II was prophecy. They had the choice to avoid prophecy. In other words, the Europeans, the Gentiles, and the whole world to avoid prophecy, but they made their choice, and their free choice actually was a fulfillment of what was already prophesied in Scripture. So we need to now start at this particular point of our reasoning and our lecture and study on this is the ancient Japanese connection. Are the Japanese Israelites? Are the Japanese Hebrews? Are the Japanese the lost tribes of Israel? Well, ancient Japanese, according to our study and according to our research, the ancient Japanese are Hebrews. Yes, the ancient Japanese are Hebrew and Hebraic people. This explains a lot of the links that you find on different people's websites, you understand, which basically try to make the ancient Japanese Israelites and make a connection. If they are Israelites, it's through the half tribe of Manasseh. You understand? And the link with Gad, as was written in the 1932 book, Who Are the Japanese, by Professor E. Odlum, M.A.B.S. of B.C. Bachelor of Science, B.Sc. in the Oak Room Hotel, Vancouver, B.C. on March 28th, 1932. A very, very interesting article and a very interesting book, that is. The book